From DeWitt Theater at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, we bring you Inventing America. Tonight, the untold story of the Bill of Rights with our special guests, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Patrick Henry, and Thomas Jefferson. Now, here is your moderator, Professor Fred Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome to Inventing America. In the first episode, we talked about how the 13 American colonies declared their independence from Great Britain. In the second episode, we discussed how our founders created a new constitution for an infant nation. But what they created, what today we think of as the miracle at Philadelphia, was anything but that at the beginning. Many of the founders were adamantly opposed. Why? Well, tonight, we'll find out. And we'll also find out why they changed their minds. Each of our guests played a significant role in making that happen. More than 2 centuries later, what the solution they came up with not only defines who we are as Americans, but serves as a beacon to the world. Our first guest is from the state of Virginia. We remember him not only as the 4th President of the United States, but as the father of the Constitution. Please welcome Mr. James Madison. It's a pleasure to have you back on the program, sir.
Well, it wasn't easy.
I don't understand.
I was in frail health my whole life. Imagine how I feel now.
All the better to have you back on the program. You'll be happy that you'll be meeting your old mentor, Mr. Jefferson.
You mean he's joining us?
Indeed, he is. We're also pleased to have back on our program the author of the Declaration of Independence and Mr. Madison's predecessor as president. Today, we remember him as the foremost American champion of human rights. Please welcome Mr. Thomas Jefferson.
My dear Madison, how good it is to see you once more. And if I may say, you look much better than you did the last time I saw you.
Thank you, sir.
And it is good to see you again, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. But I'm not so sure you're going to be happy to meet our next guest.
Oh?
Well, it's because the two of you ended up being political rivals.
Oh, good Lord. That could mean most anybody.
I'm speaking of Mr. Hamilton.
Oh. Well.
Our next guest has only recently found his place in history. He served our nation in so many ways. First, as General George Washington's aide-de-camp during the American Revolution, and later as our nation's first Secretary of the Treasury. Tonight, we remember him as an ardent defender of the Constitution. Please welcome Mr. Alexander Hamilton. It's an honor to have you back on the program, sir.
Thank you. The honor is mine. But I should point out that until we served in President Washington's cabinet, Mr. Jefferson as Secretary of State and yours truly as Secretary of the Treasury, we were allies in the cause of liberty.
Indeed we were. It was only later we became rivals.
Speaking of liberty, our next guest was known as the Orator of the Revolution. He was, in fact, a planter and a lawyer by occupation. After the Revolution, he was the first governor of post-colonial Virginia. Please welcome Mr. Patrick Henry. It's an honor to finally have you on the program, sir.
I thought you'd never ask.
Gentlemen, please have a seat. Mr. Henry, we'll begin with you.
Excellent.
Isn't it true, sir, that after you roused your fellow Virginians to rebel against the British, I recall your give me liberty or give me death speech, that you wanted nothing to do with the new federal constitution?
That is correct. The reason I objected...
The reason you objected, sir, is that any jackass can kick down a barn. It takes a skilled carpenter to build one.
Sir, the reason I objected is that it put too much power at the top. It endangered not only the rights of the states, but the freedoms of individual citizens.
What about the slaves your wife's father gave you on your wedding day?
Slaves were not citizens. As a slave owner yourself, you should know that.
Please, gentlemen, please, please. We're just getting started. Mr. Henry, would you tell us something about yourself? We know you from the liberty or death speech, but not much else.
Is that so? Well, I was born on a plantation in Virginia. When my wife and I married, her father gave us 6 slaves, Mr. Madison is correct about that, and some land upon which we tried to grow tobacco. But the crops failed, and then our house burned down.
You weren't cut out to be a farmer, it seems.
Then I opened a mercantile store, and that failed. After that, my wife had a mental breakdown and died. She left me with 6 children.
So you had 6 children.
Oh, more came after my second marriage. Her name was Dorothea Dandridge. She was 22, I 41. We had 11 more children and 77 grandchildren. Yes, father of his country indeed. But meanwhile, I had taken up politics.
It sounds like you already had a pretty good voter base.
Excellent jest, sir. And before that, I had taken up the reading of law. After 6 weeks, mind you, I passed the Virginia bar exam and became a lawyer. In 1763, I won my first important case. It was called the Parsons Cause. It determined whether the price of tobacco paid to clergy for their ecclesiastical services would be set by local authorities or the crown. It turned out that I was better litigating tobacco rather than growing it.
When did you take up politics?
Oh, in 1765, when Parliament passed the Stamp Act. I was just elected into the House of Burgesses, our legislative assembly in Williamsburg, when I made my first political speech.
I remember eavesdropping at the door.
Caesar had his Brutus, I said. Charles I his Cromwell. And George III...
And then I heard somebody shout, treason!
And George III, I said, may he profit by their example.
It must have been a remarkable speech.
And the first of many, if I may say so, in my public life.
Mr. Jefferson, you heard Mr. Henry's speech.
Indeed, I did. I was 22 at the time, reading law with Mr. George Wythe in Williamsburg. I remember how awestruck I was, but in due course I came to wonder how Henry had acquired his way with words, because he was the laziest man for reading that I've ever known.
Mr. Jefferson, it took you 4 years, did it not, to pass the bar exam? As I said, it took me 6 weeks. Do I detect a hint of jealousy?
Please, gentlemen, please. Please, gentlemen, let's keep this civil. I'd like to get Mr. Hamilton in on this discussion. Now, sir, you say you never met Mr. Henry in real life. Is that correct?
That is correct, but distance played a big part in that.
Political as well as geographical.
Yes, I would agree with that. We were at opposite ends of the political spectrum.
Can you explain?
I led the so-called Federalist movement in support of the Constitution. Mr. Henry led the anti-Federalist movement in opposition to it. He opposed having a constitutional convention in the first place.
Mr. Henry, tell the gentleman what you said when you learned about it.
I said I smelt a rat.
But Mr. Hamilton, if I recall, sir, you weren't very pleased with the outcome yourself.
I wasn't. No man's ideas were more remote from the Constitution than mine.
So what made you change your mind?
Dr. Franklin, may he rest in peace. Or more precisely, the words he spoke to us as we finished our work.
What did he say?
That the older he got, the more he doubted his own judgment and paid respect to the judgment of others.
We could benefit from his wisdom today.
I also came to the conclusion, as did Dr. Franklin, that we could do no better. that the Constitution, with all its faults, was still the best any assembly of mortals could do.
Notwithstanding an assembly of demigods.
So, we set about the task of getting it ratified.
That required approval of 9 of the 13 states. It was up to each state to ratify it. You remember how the preamble reads, "We, the people of the United States."
Yes, we, the people.
At issue was who had the power to govern, the people or the states. That was our single most divisive issue.
And to answer that question and many others that came up during the ratification debates, I wrote a series of essays with the help of Mr. Madison and Mr. John Jay of New York. These essays were first published in newspapers and later assembled into a volume called The Federalist.
Mr. Madison sent me a copy. I have it right here. This is the greatest commentary on government that ever was written.
Well, between the three of us, we wrote 85 essays in 10 months. I wrote 51 of them myself.
Can you cite some of the arguments you made? Mr. Madison, you too, if you don't mind.
If I may. Well, in Federalist number 1, we assigned a number to each essay. In Federalist number 1, I wrote the following: "It has been reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question, whether societies of men are capable of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend on accident or force."
In Federalist 10, I argued against rule by majority faction.
In Federalist 70, I argued for a one-man chief executive.
In Federalist 51, I argued for checks and balances between the 3 branches of government, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. I also reflected on the manner which government is the greatest reflection on human nature.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Jefferson, as I recall, sir, you were in France during the convention and ratification debate.
And that is correct. You know your history.
And isn't it correct, sir, that you had replaced Dr. Franklin as minister to France?
And not quite. No, I did not replace him. I succeeded him. Dr. Franklin could never be replaced.
Indeed. Well, I do stand corrected on that.
We owed much to the French as they helped us acquire our liberties from England. Remember, they gave us the Marquis de Lafayette. But it was a different country when I took up my post in 1784. The indecencies, the assaults on human liberties that brought about the French Revolution, in many ways were a repeat of the abuses that brought about our own revolution. I had seen it all before.
We call that déjà vu.
Oh, très bien. And you know a little French as well.
Well,
Yes, there were similarities and some differences. In Boston, Americans threw tea in the harbor. In Paris, the French stormed the Bastille. I saw it happen. And do you recall what date that was?
Bastille Day is July 14th.
Oh, bravo. Quite correct. The 14th of July, 1789. On that date, I witnessed firsthand the outbreak of the French Revolution. And we all know what that led to.
Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette would be no more.
And that was the end of monarchy in France. It impressed upon me the need to add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution that Mr. Madison, Mr. Hamilton, and others had hammered out back in Philadelphia, a list of the guarantees of individual liberties the government could not infringe upon.
At first, I objected to Mr. Jefferson's proposal.
Why so?
I believe state governments were sufficient guarantors of personal liberties.
I didn't support Mr. Jefferson's proposal either. In Federalist number 84, I argued that such guarantees are already inherent in the new Constitution.
What it boiled down to was that by the end of the convention, we were too worn out to take up debate on the Bill of Rights. We left it to fate, providence, if you will, as to how it would play out.
So?
It turned into a colossal mistake. Whether or not to add a Bill of Rights became the most contentious issue in the ratification debates. In Massachusetts, at their ratifying convention, a fist fight broke out. It didn't go much better in my own state, Virginia. Before the Constitution came to a vote, Mr. Henry rose in opposition and launched into another one of his demagogic rants.
Take us back to that moment.
2nd of June, 1788, in convention in Richmond, 8 of the 13 states, 1 short of the 9 needed, had already ratified the Constitution. This meant that Virginia's vote was critical. On the 3rd day of the convention, Mr. Henry took the floor.
Gentlemen, whither is the spirit of America gone? Whither is the genius of America fled? We drew our spirit of liberty from our British ancestors. But now, gentlemen, the American spirit, assisted by the ropes and chains of consolidation, are about to convert this country into a powerful and mighty empire. Will there be no checks or balances in this government? What can avail your specious imaginary balances, your rope dancing, chain rattling, ridiculous ideal checks and contrivances? I would make this inquiry of those who composed the Federal Convention. What right had they to say "we the people"? Who authorized them to speak the language of "we the people" instead of "we the states"? The people gave them no authorization to use their name. The states are the soul of our Confederation. May they remain so.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. So, Mr. Madison, how did the vote go after that?
In spite of Mr. Henry's plea, we voted to ratify the Constitution, 89 in favor, 79 against, along with the proposed Bill of Rights. Even with that, Mr. Henry wasn't very happy.
Tell me about the Bill of Rights.
We intended them as amendments to the Constitution. We started out with 17. We ended up with 10. Without Mr. Jefferson pestering us from France, we might have ended up with none at all, or with no Constitution at all.
I happen to have a copy of the Bill of Rights here. Would you mind reading some to us?
Certainly. Article 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble. 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. 3. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner. 4. The right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. 5. No person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. 8. Excessive bail shall not be inquired, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
Sir, it occurred to me while you were reading that it might not be a bad idea if on Inauguration Day, the president were required to not make a speech, but instead stand before the Chief Justice of the United States and recite the Bill of Rights.
If I may say so, that is a splendid idea. though I never have been fond of giving speeches.
As for me, I would rather make a speech.
Mr. Madison, sir, the last time you were on the program, you spoke of George Mason and the Virginia Declaration of Rights. How much did that influence the Bill of Rights and the Constitution?
A great deal. But it was not the only influence. The ideas go back to the Magna Carta and to the English Bill of Rights that Parliament passed in 1689. It even guaranteed the right to keep and bear arms, although the right applied only to Protestants.
Not to Catholics?
You can blame that on Henry VIII. If you remember, he wasn't very fond of Catholics. But we did improve upon the English version.
When was the Constitution ratified?
The 21st of June in 1788. New Hampshire was the 9th state to ratify.
And the Bill of Rights?
The 15th of December in 1791. 2 years and 8 months after George Washington was inaugurated.
December 15th, Bill of Rights Day. Thank you, gentlemen. Of the 4,500 words of the U.S. Constitution, the most hotly debated are the 462 that make up the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. Whether it be issues of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to bear arms, or any of the other freedoms spelled out in those amendments, it's that part of the Constitution that we, the people of the United States, most often look to the Supreme Court of the United States to decide how they apply to us. In the next part of our program, we're going to find out what the Founding Fathers have to say about that. What did they have in mind when they wrote the Bill of Rights? What did they intend? And what do they have to share with us of their wisdom in the 21st century? For that, we have invited a number of Hope College students to participate in a town hall discussion. Each of them will have the opportunity to pose a question so that we may find out what our founders had to say to us today.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Fuller. I'm a sophomore from Kentwood, Michigan, and my question is for you, Mr. Henry. Isn't it true that you were so upset after your state of Virginia voted in favor of the Constitution that you tried to prevent Mr. Madison's election to Congress by gerrymandering his district?
Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for your question. As you heard from Mr. Madison earlier, it was a very close vote in Virginia. But my friends, being naturally suspicious, especially after his vigorous opposition in the first place to that proposal of the Bill of Rights, I did not trust him. I certainly did not want him to be one of the 2 senators for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so I did exert my considerable influence within the General Assembly in Richmond Town to ensure, by configuring the voting districts in the Commonwealth of Virginia in such a way that 2 of my very close friends, both very hard states' rights men, would be appointed to those 2 offices. As it turns out, Mr. Madison was able to secure election to the House of Representatives, defeating, in fact, his future presidential successor, Mr. James Monroe, and he did come forward with a Bill of Rights, one which I found inadequate, too feeble and too few. What, sir? Were you afraid of using too much paper? By the way, as I perpetrated this particular political act first, I believe the word should be Henrymander. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you.
Mr. Fuller, I beg your pardon. Colonel Henry, you made statement that you did not trust Mr. Madison, and so you saw fit to Henrymander or gerrymander the political districts. Well, it appears you may not have trusted the people either.
Oh, no,
in their
sir.
opinion. Oh, yes, sir. You desired we the states, not we the people. Thank heavens it's not Henrymandering, and I shall see fit that someday gerrymandering may be discontinued.
Hello, My name is Irene Garish, and I'm a junior from Los Alamos, New Mexico. My question is for Mr. Hamilton. You said you objected to the Bill of Rights because such guarantees were already inherent in the Constitution. Why not spell them out?
Well, my dear Ms. Garish, I appreciate your question for several reasons. First, it is an important one, and it also allows me to set some distance between myself and three members of what I called the Virginia Junta. I will say this as clearly as I can. A Bill of Rights is a foolish and dangerous idea. Now, note the words. I do not say that rights are foolish, but that a Bill of Rights. There are several reasons for this. First, I am told that in your day you do not use the mathematics of our day to calculate the building of your skyscrapers. You do not use the medicine of our day to treat your children's illnesses. But yet you somehow cling to the notion that the only political wisdom possible comes from a world in which information could travel no faster than a galloping horse or a ship at sea. There is a danger of locking your concept of rights into an era that no longer applies. I am told that in your day you revere your First and Second Amendments, but how many of you spend much time thinking about your Third? How many of you worry deeply about the notion that British soldiers will be forced into your home against your will? I want you to imagine a time in our nation when perhaps an individual is elected to high office who is both ignorant and a tyrant, a person who would quest after power and might look at the Bill of Rights and say, these are your rights. These are your only rights. I see it says you have freedom of speech. It says nothing about freedom of protest song. It says freedom of the press. The press is a printing press. So your television news is not protected. When you list rights, you create a profound danger that a future demagogue could say that these are the only rights you have. And that is a risk not worth taking in any century. I thank you, Ms. Garish.
Thank you very much.
Again, Ms. Garish, I beg your pardon. General, indeed, a Bill of Rights ought to be inferred in our Constitution because we do not know precisely what they may become in the future any less than what they were in the past. Are we to rest upon inference on such an important subject as the inherent rights of man? Are they to be any different in the future than they have been in the past? Have they not existed from time immemorial? And are they not given to mankind, not by any government, not by any ruler, but given to man by nature and nature's God?
No, sir. Fundamental rights, as I wrote, are not to be rummaged for among dusty parchments or dusty records. They are written as with a sunbeam upon the whole volume of human nature, and no mortal power can erase or obscure them. You have fundamental natural rights. But what that right might mean in any given era must rely on the wisdom of the people, sir, that you revere with such greatness.
I beg your pardon, sir. We're talking about the inalienable rights from time immemorial. The inalienable rights of man, sir. It is not the duty of government to infer these rights, sir, any more than it is the duty of government to try and change human nature.
If government, sir, represents the people, then the people must decide in any given era what, for example, the concept of speech means.
Well, then have a faith for the people, sir. Do not have a fear. And remind yourself, if you will, that we are born free to declare, and therefore we must declare that these are the inalienable rights of man.
How do you like that?
Hello, my name is Jose Angulo, and I am a junior from San Francisco, California. My question is for Mr. Jefferson. Recently, in your hometown of Charlottesville, Virginia, one person was killed and many others were injured at a so-called free speech demonstration. Aren't there times like this when First Amendment guarantees of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly go too far?
Mr. Agulo, I have heard of what transpired in my native town as I was making my way here westward. And I am quite dismayed and upset with such a liberty protected and defended in our First Amendment taken so far that it could inflict hostility and aggression upon the citizens. Is it not the purpose of our Constitution, particularly pronounced in the preamble, to maintain not only the public welfare, but the public peace? I would agree that if any of our amendments guaranteeing inalienable rights want to go too far to inflict hostility, to inflict aggression upon the people, well, then the people ought to let their opinion be heard rather than to lose these rights. Yes, it is the first and foremost inalienable right to hold an opinion freely and to freely express one's opinion, but not to go so far to inflict harm, or as you say, death upon an individual. That is not a right. That, if you will, is an oppression. It is a crime.
Thank you.
You seem to suggest, sir, that rights, though fundamental, may need to be altered by the time and era in which the event takes place.
I am saying if a right goes too far, General, then it must be attended to with the law.
Hear, hear. How about that? Jefferson and I agree.
You're both wrong.
My name is Natalie Folk, and I'm a senior from Mahomet, Illinois. My question is for Mr. Madison. It has to do with the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. Since militias, well-regulated or otherwise, are no longer necessary to the security of a free state, isn't that amendment obsolete? Why not repeal it?
I thank you for the question. I'm a little bit curious as to the circumstances that would bring it about. There was no authority granted to the Constitution that would in any way allow it to obtrude upon the rights of individuals, rights that were extant even before the Constitution was written, even before our Declaration of Independence, even before the first breath of mankind. Well, if these rights are extant before a government is formed, it seems only reasonable you form a government that will not abridge those rights. When the government is formed, it becomes clear that the very rights we might have in nature might not carry the same weight in community. That you must refine that right as the circumstances require. Your question, madam, refers to rendering the Second Amendment obsolete. Why not repeal it? I suggest that we should not consider repealing rights which were extant even before we formed the government. I thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Mr. Henry, if I recall my history, sir, you were quite adamant about the right to keep and bear arms. I mention this because of my own military background. If you consider the right to bear arms from the context of the 18th century, wasn't that really a military term? One may bear arms against an enemy of the state, but not, say, against a rabbit or your neighbor. So my question to you, sir, is, did you intend that right to extend from the military to civilian life?
I thank you for your question, sir, as well as for your service to your countrymen. I have said many times that I have ever been a most devoted student to the subject of history, because that way I know where I am and where I am likely to go. In 1622, only 15 years after English feet touched Virginia soil, there was an uprising of the Pamunkey Nation, the Indians in that part of the country, and nearly half the entire British population was massacred. Ever since that time, we have had militia laws in place requiring all able-bodied males above the age of 18 to own a gun, 1 pound of gunpowder, 4 pounds of shot. They are required to muster 3 to 7 times each year to reacquaint themselves to the manual of arms and to practice the military exercise. This is our militia system, our citizens' army, if you will. And the understanding has always been that the citizens' army, by every male being armed, would be stronger and thus be able to defeat any invasion or any standing army raised up by a government that might become oppressive. So certainly, in our tradition in Virginia, The right to keep and bear arms has a military element to it. However, we must also pay attention to the great philosopher John Locke, whom many regard to be the greatest genius of the enlightened age. He assured us that rights come from God, not from government, that rights appertain to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And naturally, with that goes the protection and defense of same. And thus, the right to keep and bear arms is also an individual right, which must never be infringed. As I stated back in 1775, never trust that government that seeks to remove your arms, gentlemen, for there is but one purpose to it, and one alone, to remove your means of self-defense, hoping thereby to make an easy conquest of you and to fasten ever more tightly to your wrists the shackles of slavery.
Colonel Henry, with his great eloquence, proves my point. I think you would agree, Mr. Madison, that part of the intention of the Second Amendment was to ensure that the citizenry, in part, would always have sufficient weaponry to overthrow a government should it become tyrannical.
In part.
In great danger, sir, because in your day, do you wish your citizens armed in such facilities to take down your United States Army? Do you want your unusual neighbor to have access to an anthrax cannon, your strange uncle that you see only at Christmas to have a flamethrower? To lock these rights in time creates dangers in yours.
Our next questioner.
Hello, my name's Joey Williams. I'm a senior from Farmington Hills, Michigan. My question is directed towards Mr. Madison. Mr. Madison, today in 21st century America, we have these devices called cell phones. Imagine a speaking trumpet that can allow you to contact anyone on Earth at any time, any place. My question is, should the Fourth Amendment's ban on unreasonable searches require a warrant for police to acquire records of a cell phone? The reason I'm asking is because the question is currently in front of the Supreme Court.
I see the prospect of new communication, Mr. Jefferson. I cannot possibly answer to the judgment for and against the issue you address here with your question. But I do believe it is part and parcel that we not forget that rights are extant in this nation, and that amongst them, as I read earlier, was the protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. This seems to be an indication of where this appears to be necessary on some branch of government upon your cell phone, you called it. Well, I can only say that it is further evidence that as each generation engages with their time and their place, that the fact that you even bring the question to the fore indicates that there is a concern about the application of the right to a particular circumstance. How do you feel about the answer, sir?
Personally, I don't want any police officers looking at my cell phone, let alone my parents.
But you don't want a police officer looking at your parents?
I guess not. No. However, it's a complicated issue, and I'm looking forward to hearing the Supreme Court's decision this summer.
Well, I can only hope and add in manner of advice in my aged capacity, that even though there seems to be a devolving of the decision upon the Supreme Court of the United States, that not a one of us will consider the decisions of the court, however elevated in matters of jurisprudence, is the end of the answer. If the collective society feels that in this instance the search and seizure is unreasonable, they have the very capacity as citizens of the country, as citizens of their respective states, to invite the amendment to the Constitution that may contradict the assertion of the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I cannot help but note that each of the students has been using their device to read their question. 'Tis a pity Hope College will not provide its students with paper.
Hello, my name is Makia Royer. I'm a sophomore from Framingham, Massachusetts, and I have a question for Mr. Jefferson. Mr. Jefferson, in today's political discourse, we hear a lot about walls that separate us. You yourself called for a wall of separation between church and state, yet starting in your time and continuing to our own, a chaplain opens each session of Congress with prayer. Indeed, our currency, whether it's a quarter or a $10 bill, bears the inscription, "In God we trust." Aren't these things in violation of the First Amendment statement that Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment of religion?
Ms. Rohr, I beg your pardon, but I may be a little prone to not hearing correctly. Did you say that our currency, our specie of our nation, bears an inscription, "In God we trust"?
In God we trust.
I declare, General Hamilton, we collaborated, did we not, upon standardizing of our nation's currency to make the same value in Georgia and the Carolinas as in Virginia and Massachusetts, Rhode Island and the Providence plantations, to think that indeed the establishment of a national mint and then to have such a statement stamped upon it? I do believe, Miss Rohr, that is a heresy. It must be unto our Creator. Would not all Christians then have forgotten the reason why Jesus threw the moneylenders out of the temple? Unto what are we providing now an allegiance? A recognition of our Creator with money? Yes, I did make statement about, about a separation, a wall. Great wall of separation between church and state. I did not proffer it publicly. I provided it in an answer to a letter I received from a coterie of Baptist preachers in Danbury, Connecticut. They wrote me during my first administration, asking me my opinion upon the fact that in Connecticut they had to abide by the Constitution of their state to continue to offer a tithing money to the support of the Congregationalist Church. They asked me if not our Constitution superseded that. After all, it is the law of the land. I wrote back to them and said, bear with patience until the Constitution of Connecticut amends itself to the Constitution of our nation. And yes, that no one more than myself would rather see a great wall of separation be built between church and state. I ask you, citizens, is it the duty of government to dictate religious opinion? I dare say the reason that so many of you and your ancestors sought an asylum here was to escape those ancient tumults and calumnies of European kingdoms that coerced their subjects to attend one religion more than another, to furnish contributions of money to one religion more than another. No, the only duty of any government and its laws is simply to protect people from injury by one and the other. Otherwise, to leave them free to pursue their own industry and their own improvement, and their improvement will be the more successful. When the ecclesiastical laws are free to attend to their duty, the administration of the soul, in an effort simply to do good.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson.
My name is Derek Chen. I'm a senior from Orange County, California. This question is for Mr. Hamilton. I direct this to you because of your connection to Wall Street. Recently, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations have the same free speech rights as individuals and thus can make unlimited political contributions. Do you agree with that?
Well, Mr. Chen, I thank you for your question, and I would argue that I did have an office on Wall Street, and I was engaged in a number of monetary affairs. The currency question earlier reminded me that my visage appears on your $10 bill. Mr. Jefferson, upon your nickel.
And I may remind you, General, that there are far more nickels than $10 bills. Speechless, I see.
I am rarely speechless, sir. But I will turn to Mr. Chen. Your question is of two parts. The first is as to whether a corporation can have some of the rights of a person. The answer is a legal one, and it is trivially true. Yes, corporations can have some of the rights of people. This college can own this building. Your grocery store may own the parking lot in which you park your conveyances. These are trivial notions of personhood that corporations share. But the larger question I believe you are asking is about their role in politics. And I will say this. I wrote of Mr. Jefferson that he most ardently quests after the presidential chair, in spite of denials of any such interest. But yet even Mr. Jefferson, in pursuit of that office, would never dream, I think I can say for you, sir, never dream of leaving even his own front porch. It would be undignified to campaign. I'm told that you are now in a different era. And so, given that we lived in a 3-mile-per-hour world, I'm reluctant to tell you what you should do in your campaigns today. But I would point out that we gave you a provision in the Constitution to deal with this very issue. In Article 1, Section 4, it states clearly that the states shall have the right to decide the time, the place, and the manner of elections. And I would certainly think that the funding of elections, the way in which elections are conducted, would fall under the notion of manner. So if in your day you believe that it is inappropriate to do one action or another in your campaigning, the states have the constitutional right to regulate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I would like to close out this part of our program with a question for Mr. Jefferson. Sir, some have questioned whether the president might be in violation of the First Amendment. We keep hearing accusations of fake news. He's even threatened to shut down some news organizations that are critical of him. So I'd like to ask you, what is your take on the First Amendment, and how important is it to a democracy like ours?
I thank you, Dr. Johnson. I hope that I had emphasized how worthy our First Amendment is earlier, recognizing those inherent rights that are given to the family of man, not by any government, not by any ruler, those rights that are given to man by nature, nature's God, the first and foremost amongst them, to hold an opinion freely and to freely express one's opinion. And that, of course, allows for the freedom of the press. Now, that is not to say that all newspapers print the facts. No, I would agree they do not, because certain newspapers become known as tabloids. They are the ones you cannot depend upon. They are the ones who print, what did you call it, fake news, twistifications of the facts, deceits and lies, and yet, citizens, you are free to peruse them as you choose. So I would be concerned, citizens, about preferring a tabloid over a newspaper that you can depend upon. And therefore, Dr. Johnson, as I have written and pronounced once more, were it left to me to decide whether we should have this nation with a government and no newspapers, or have this nation with newspapers and no government, I would not hesitate a moment but to accept the latter. Who must be informed? Who must make up their minds to what they read in the newspaper? What American citizen would ever seek to satisfy solely themselves by reading one newspaper that prints only what they want to read, without reading the opposite opinion, and then make up their mind for what is best for everyone? It is an ancient adage, citizens, wherever the press is free, the people will be free. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your wisdom and your insights. Mr. Henry, if I may come back to you for the last part of our discussion. In episode 1, we discussed Mr. Jefferson's Declaration of Independence and how it all started with his election to the Second Continental Congress.
Yes, I remember it well. The Virginia Convention in Richmond, March 1775.
It was also at that convention that you gave the most famous speech of your life, the one that inspired your fellow Virginians and the other colonists to take up arms against the British.
Indeed.
Can you tell us what led to that speech?
After George III rejected our latest petition of grievances, I moved that Virginia be put into a state of defense. Cries of protest filled the room. It was then that I rose to speak.
Can you set the scene for us?
Yes. It was the 23rd of March, 1775, in St. John's Church in Richmond. The question before this House is one of awful moment to the country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason towards my country. It is natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging of the future, but by the past. And judging by the past, I should wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify these hopes of peace and reconciliation. Is it that insidious smile with which our petition has been lately received? Trust it not, my friends. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with these warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain, after all these things, may we continue to cling to this fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges for which we have been so long contending, we must fight. I repeat it, we must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us we are weak, but when shall we be stronger? The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, let it come. It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it the gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we end our program where it began, with our love of liberty. Whatever differences we have as Americans, wherever we fall along the political spectrum, whatever grievances we may have against each other, let us remember the one thing that we have in common. As our founders put it, e pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. Our union may be imperfect, but what unites us is our love for liberty. For more than 200 years, that's what this country had stood for. For more than 200 years, that's what has been a beacon of light for the world. May it never go out. We would like to thank Hope College and the Hope College Theater Department for hosting all 3 episodes of Inventing America. And now, on behalf of Mr. James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and Patrick Henry, thank you and God bless.
To order a copy of Inventing America, call 1-800-442-2771 or order online at gvsu.edu/WGVU store.